The snow that morning looked almost too perfect to be real. Powdered silk stretched across the valley, reflecting a pale winter sun that hovered like a quiet spectator above the jagged peaks. Flags snapped gently in the alpine breeze, each one marking the lanes of the Olympic cross-country ski sprint course. The stadium pulsed with anticipation. Thousands of spectators huddled in colorful jackets, their breath turning into small clouds as they cheered, laughed, and waited. This was it, the final sprint. The race that would decide everything. Athletes stood at the start line, their skis aligned with geometric precision. They were the fastest in the world, their bodies sculpted by years of relentless training, their minds sharpened by competition. Some bounced lightly in place, testing their edges. Others stared straight ahead, locked into a mental tunnel that excluded everything but the finish line. The announcer's voice boomed across the valley, listing names, nations, and accomplishments. Cameras zoomed in on determined faces, capturing beads of frost clinging to eyelashes, the subtle tightening of jaws, the rhythm of controlled breathing. Then came silence. A deep, collective hush. The starter raised the pistol. A crack shattered the stillness. And they were off. The skiers exploded forward, poles stabbing into the snow with mechanical precision, skis slicing through the track in a blur of motion. Within seconds, the pack stretched out, each athlete fighting for position on the narrow course. Snow sprayed behind them like comet tails as they surged up the first incline. The crowd roared. Everything was going exactly as expected. Until it wasn't. It started as a blur at the edge of the forest, a flicker of movement that didn't belong to the rigid choreography of the race. At first, only a few spectators noticed. A child pointed. A camera operator hesitated. Out from the trees burst a dog. Not a sleek racing dog. Not a trained service animal. Just a dog. A medium-sized, scruffy creature with a coat that looked like it had been painted in hurried strokes of brown, white, and black. Its ears flopped wildly as it ran, its tail wagging with uncontainable enthusiasm. It sprinted onto the course. Directly into Olympic history. For a fraction of a second, the world froze, not in reality but in perception. No one had planned for this. No one had rehearsed this scenario. The race officials blinked in disbelief. The commentators stumbled over their words. Ladies and gentlemen, we appear to have a dog on the course. The dog, blissfully unaware of the magnitude of its intrusion, dashed alongside the leading skier as if it had been training for this moment its entire life. Its paws kicked up snow in chaotic bursts, its tongue lolling out in joy. The lead skier glanced sideways, and nearly lost balance. Behind them, confusion rippled through the pack. One skier swerved, another slowed, a third let out an involuntary laugh that escaped like a crack in their focus. The crowd, stunned into silence just seconds earlier, erupted. Some laughed, some gasped, some stood up, unsure whether to cheer or panic. Smartphones rose into the air like a forest of tiny periscopes, capturing the surreal spectacle. The dog, meanwhile, was having the time of its life. It darted ahead, then circled back, weaving between skiers with reckless abandon. At one point, it ran directly across the track, causing a near collision that sent two competitors scrambling to regain their rhythm. Snow flew, poles clattered, a collective groan echoed from the stands. Officials sprang into action, too late, too slow, too human. By the time they reached the edge of the course, the dog had already decided that the race was far more exciting than anything they could offer. It chased the leaders, then it led them. For a brief, absurd stretch of the race, the dog was in first place. The commentators leaned fully into the chaos. And it looks like, yes, indeed, the canine competitor has taken the lead. Extraordinary technique, though perhaps lacking in formal registration. Laughter rippled through living rooms across the world as millions watched the live broadcast. Social media ignited instantly. Clips spread like wildfire. Memes were born in real time. Back on the course, the athletes faced a dilemma no training program had prepared them for. Do you focus? Do you avoid the dog? Do you race the dog? One skier, young, fearless, perhaps a little delirious from the intensity, made a split-second decision. He surged forward, accelerating past the others, chasing both the race and the unexpected interloper. His skis carved aggressive lines into the snow, his poles driving with renewed force. The dog noticed, and interpreted it as a challenge. With a joyful bark, it sprinted faster. The crowd lost its mind. The stadium became a storm of sound, cheers, laughter, disbelief. The race had transformed from a display of elite athleticism into something far more unpredictable, far more human. Or perhaps, more animal. The dog veered slightly to the right, then cut back across the track, narrowly missing a tangle of skis. One athlete stumbled and fell, sliding into the soft barrier at the side. Gasps echoed, quickly replaced by relief as they scrambled back to their feet. Still, the race continued. Because that's what athletes do. They adapt. They push forward, even when a dog is leading the Olympic sprint. Officials finally managed to get closer, attempting to intercept the canine chaos. One volunteer crouched low, arms outstretched, calling softly. Another waved a jacket, hoping to redirect the animal away from the track. The dog paused. For just a second, its head tilted, its tail wagged, and then, like a bolt of furry lightning, it darted in the opposite direction, back toward the heart of the race. The leaders were approaching the final stretch now. The stadium loomed ahead, a roaring amphitheater of energy and expectation. The finish line glowed under the winter sun, a promise of glory just meters away. And the dog was still there. Still running. Still part of the story. The leading skier made his move, pushing with everything he had left. Muscles burned. Lungs screamed. The world narrowed to a single point, the line ahead. The dog, sensing the crescendo of excitement, sprinted alongside him, matching his pace stride for stride, or rather, paw for ski. For a surreal moment, they crossed into the stadium together. The roar was deafening. Flags waved. Bells rang. People stomped their feet, their cheers echoing off the mountains. The skier surged. The dog leapt. They crossed the finish line within a heartbeat of each other. And then it was over. The skier collapsed onto the snow, exhausted, victorious, or at least, the first human to finish. Officials rushed in. Cameras zoomed. The dog slowed to a happy trot, tongue hanging out, as if wondering why everyone had suddenly stopped running. A volunteer finally managed to clip a leash onto its collar. Yes, it had a collar, and guided it gently away from the chaos. The race results were quickly confirmed. Times were analyzed, placements were decided, but none of that mattered in the way it usually did. Because something else had happened. Something unexpected. Something unforgettable. In the hours that followed, the story spread across the globe. Headlines buzzed with variations of the same astonished theme. Videos racked up millions of views. Commentators debated how such a thing could occur, while secretly reveling in the joy of it. The dog became an instant sensation. People wanted to know everything. Where did it come from? Who did it belong to? How did it get onto the course? Eventually, the answers emerged. The dog's name was Luna. She belonged to a local family who lived just beyond the forest bordering the course. Somehow, in the excitement of the day, a gate had been left open. Luna, curious and energetic, had followed the distant noise, the cheers, the announcements, the hum of something extraordinary. And she had found her way to the Olympics. The family, initially mortified, quickly found themselves swept up in the global affection for their adventurous pet. Interviews followed. Apologies were made. Laughter was shared. The athletes, too, responded with grace. Some joked about the new competitor. Others admitted that the moment had broken their focus, but also made the race strangely enjoyable. One even said it reminded him why he loved the sport in the first place. Because sometimes, despite all the training, all the pressure, all the expectations, something unexpected can remind you that joy still exists. Days later, Luna was invited back to the stadium, this time as an honored guest. She wore a small, specially made coat with an Olympic emblem stitched onto it. The crowd cheered as she trotted across the snow, this time under careful supervision. She wagged her tail. Of course she did, because for Luna, it had never been about medals or records or history. It had been about running. About the thrill of movement. About the simple, unfiltered joy of being alive in a moment that felt exciting and new. And in disrupting the race, she had given something back to the world, a reminder that even in the most carefully planned events, there is always room for surprise. For laughter. For a little bit of chaos. The 2026 Olympic cross-country ski sprint would be remembered for many reasons. For the incredible performances. For the fierce competition. For the triumphs and heartbreaks that define the games. But above all, it would be remembered for a dog. A scruffy, joyful, unstoppable dog who ran into history, not because she meant to, but because she simply followed her instincts. And in doing so, she reminded everyone watching that sometimes, the most unforgettable moments are the ones no one sees coming.